the essence of who we are can be changed, the more our mind is renewed. It's one of the things that gives me such great hope that whoever I am right now, if I look at it and I go, I am not who I wish to be, I don't have to get filled with despair. I can be transformed. I can be renewed and become something new and different over the course of time. It provides great hope that we can be transformed by the renewing, the changing of our minds around us. Oh, it's so good.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rooted, where we are rooted in truth, growing in freedom, and prospering in life. If you are new to this podcast or just need a reminder, we are focused on looking at what people are rooting their lives in, because what you are rooted in ultimately affects the fruit you will produce. Our life verse, Psalms 1:3, reads, "That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers."
Today, we want to dive deep into this idea of establishing healthy roots in order to cultivate holistic well-being. And we're so excited to introduce Dr. Christine Osgood, who is definitely an expert in the topic. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist, has her Master's of Divinity and Doctorate of Ministry, and she's also currently the Director of Wellbeing Initiatives at Bethel University. Dr. Osgood, thank you so much for being on this podcast.
Oh, ladies, I'm so excited to be here with you. Thanks for inviting me to come over.
Yeah, for sure. Could you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself, your current role, and what got you interested in well-being?
Yeah, definitely. Well, first and foremost, I want to go all the way back. I was a Bethel student way back in the day, and it was here at Bethel that a deep love of understanding, or the intersection between psychology and spirituality, started. I was a BTS minor and a psychology major here at Bethel, and I was just fascinated with, okay, what actually goes on in a human soul's transformation and development over the course of their lifespan. And so my entire life has really been about taking a look at how do we grow, how do we develop, how has God wired us to continue to develop over the course of our lifetime. And so it's been fun to work at Bethel in a variety of different ways as an employee, as a faculty member, not just having been connected to the school because I was a student, but because I worked here, and to have so many of my different jobs here over the course of I just finished 26 years here.
Wow.
So
That's incredible.
many of my different jobs be connected to this idea of, okay, who are we as humans? How has God created us? How are we shaped and formed? And how are we transformed over the course of time? So my current role at Bethel is the Director of Culture and Wellbeing, taking a look at human well-being, employee well-being and flourishing here. It's just kind of like a capstone experience for me, even career-wise, to be taking a look at how are our employees doing here? What do they need? And how can we tend to them well and tend to their soul well? So this has been a lifelong journey of taking a look at humans and what shapes us and how are we being shaped in a healthy, holistic way.
That's so beautiful. You mentioned a lot the word well-being. How would you define that word? Because I think a lot of people interpret it in different ways.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And I honestly, I kind of break out in hives a little bit about the word well-being, because so many people equate well-being with wellness. And then they think that they need to go into the wellness center and they need to run 17 miles and then they need to eat broccoli and then they've tended to their well-being. And I'm like, actually, well-being is so much more beautiful than that. And so I like to think of well-being as much more of an umbrella term where so many different aspects of a human's life all influence their overall well-being. And then because I have a background in spiritual formation, I really do look at it as what is helping the soul inside of a human flourish, be whole, thriving. And so when I think about well-being, I'm thinking about the intrinsic nature of a human and how it is thriving and flourishing in life today. And so that's way more than did I get my run in today and did I sleep 8 hours? So
Exactly.
What does it take for the soul to be well?
what do you think takes for the soul to be well? That's a good question.
Oh my gosh. Actually, I think that so I was part of the team that created the course at Bethel with regards to well-being for our incoming first-year students. And so obviously I do think that the six aspects that we put on the well-being wheel obviously are important if we're looking at holistic well-being. So those were the spiritual aspect of one's life, the meaning aspect of a person's life, that what is happening physiologically inside of them, but then also looking at the cognitive aspect of who we are. What are our habits of thinking? And then the emotive side of us, what are our habits of feeling? And then what are the relationships that we are a part of? Now, those 6 areas are my slam dunk. Like, if we're going to talk about a soul being well, I'm going to for sure want to talk about those 6 aspects of life. Okay. But there are so many other things that influence a person's well-being, and we just didn't have time in a semester to explore them. But things like, what is the environment that they're living in? Like literally, like the natural environment that they're living in, let alone the environment, the community that they're a part of. Those things influence somebody's well-being. Financially, what's happening in their life, that does influence a person's overall essence, how it is that they are engaged. And I hate even thinking about that, but it is. We do have to think about financial aspects of life. Vocation. What job is somebody in the midst of career-wise, and how is that impacting their well-being? So it's one of these like phrases or words that actually encompasses a lot of things in this world. And so the way that I like to keep coming back to it is, what is impacting my soul? What is impacting your soul? What is impacting the essence of who we are? And where do we have agency to influence some of those things? Where can we partner with God in influencing some of these things so that our soul can actually be well?
That's
amazing.
So good.
Yeah.
One thing that I really loved in your course that you talked about was those 6 main things, but not seeing them as separate buckets, but things that are this wheel, like you mentioned, that they influence each other. Could you tell our audience a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh. I love it that you still remember that. That's so great. But of course, you would remember that. You're such a good student.
Well, you put it into our minds, like writing the notes, having to submit them, that repetition, it helps.
It actually does help. I know it's kind of a pain, but it really does help a person learn. So those dimensions actually are so dynamically interconnected. And I'll take one of the easiest ones most of us can see on a consistent basis. If we talk about our bodies first, and we take a look at, okay, what if you don't sleep? What if you don't eat? And what if you have basically just been laying on the couch for like 3 days? Most of us feel like trash at that point in time because we have not been able to tend to our physiology to help it flourish in and of itself. But then you can notice what happens to how you think about things and how you feel about things when you haven't been sleeping, when you haven't been eating, when you haven't been moving, because the body has not been tended to. Oftentimes we can see that there are ripple effects into how we think about things. I don't know about you guys, but when I get like really, really physiologically exhausted, I notice that what I label emotions can start to go to kind of sad, dark places when my body has not 100%. Been tended. Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, if I don't get like at least 8 hours of sleep, I become so cranky. Like even as a kid, my parents were always like, if Josie's emotional, you just have to go to bed.
Yes, exactly. So you've seen what I call one of the easiest or most simple ripple effects that we can see is that if the physiology is off, we're gonna see it popping up and influencing other aspects of our lives, which then impacts the essence of what we're bringing around and we are displaying in this world. So I never had thought, like when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, I had never thought about if I take care of my body, how is that then going to influence my spirituality? How is that then going to influence my relationships? If I'm not tending to this aspect of my life, like it really is impacting some of these other ones. So yeah, when I started to actually see, this wasn't just like, we should see how we're all dynamically interconnected. It was like, oh no, there's actually science that backs all of this.
Exactly.
I was like, we all need to know the science and help us understand, wow, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And let's like not just give lip service to that. Let's like really see how God has created us in this beautiful, beautiful fashion. So I wish that people who are listening to this podcast could also see your faces, because both of you are sitting here and you're nodding your heads and like
Yes.
you are tracking. And I'm curious, what's going through your mind even as we talk about this right now?
Yeah, well, you mentioned the idea of sleep. And I feel like sleep is such an important topic, especially in well-being, like physically and how that affects our emotions. And that kind of gets me wanting to know more. Why is sleep so important? Can we hit on sleep just for a little bit here?
Yes, we can. And in my head, I'm like, oh, dang, can I remember my course curriculum to be able to talk about that? But there's so many processes that occur inside of the brain and our immune system. And actually, there's a lot of things with regards to tissue repair and other things that happen inside of our body when we go into different levels of sleep or different phases of sleep. And so if we don't allow our bodies to actually rest fully, like one of my things that I will always remember is that memory consolidation does not occur in the brain in the same way that it can when we are well rested. And so I always was thinking, oh my gosh, all these sweet college students need to know, like, you're literally going to remember nothing on the test if you don't just go to bed after you've studied, because your brain will continue to work on memory consolidation, encoding things into your brain that you're then going to be able to retrieve when you go and take the test the next day. And so all the students who pull all-nighters in order to prepare for the test, I'm like, actually, you're totally working against yourself at this point in time. You really just need to go to bed at midnight and allow yourself that time for your brain to continue to process, encode, and consolidate that information so it can be retrieved at a later point in time. So just kind of basics. We gotta go back to the basics on some of that stuff.
I love that.
For people that kind of struggle with getting to sleep on a decent time and having that regular schedule, what are some practical things that you do to make that normal?
Okay. Ladies, I feel so bad because it totally goes against like the research and what people tell you to do. But I'm just going to tell you what I do because you asked what do I do to help me go to sleep.
Exactly.
Okay. This is terrible. You should not, everybody who's listening, you should not listen to this, but this is what I do. Because everybody says screens are terrible and you should, the blue light and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. And you shouldn't be scrolling and all that. And I agree actually with the scrolling piece because then that triggers perhaps other things inside of you if you come across some information or whatnot. So, but I do use YouTube when I go to sleep because it helps me to shut down my brain. But here's what I watch.
Okay.
This is so dumb, but it's so true. There's two very, very, my favorite things to watch are, there's this guy who has filmed his life living in the Italian Alps, renovating these little stone cabins. And so, and he films himself long form. You know how people do like, short videos? He's like, forget it, I'm doing long form. And so he does like 50 to 120 minutes videos of him renovating his stone farmhouse.
So that actually sounds so relaxing.
So relaxing.
I can see how that can just calm your body down right before the night.
Completely. Because I mean, like, seriously, watching somebody do plumbing or electrical, like, seriously puts you to sleep. At least it puts me to sleep. So I watch that. And then if I'm tired of watching home renovation, and he doesn't talk, which is the other thing. And he just does these beautiful drone shots of the Italian Alps in between, like, working on his little farmhouse. So it's very peaceful. But the other thing that I watch in order to help me go to sleep is I watch people who do solo hiking and they film themselves solo hiking. So then they don't talk and they just are walking through like the Dolomites. I'm like, I'm never going to probably hike in the Dolomites, but I want to be able to see this beautiful scenery. So as you can see, I have kind of this nature theme, and when I can watch nature and allow just nature to put me to sleep, it's wonderful. So sorry, folks. Everybody who knows the research that you're not supposed to watch television to help you fall asleep, I've totally just gone against that. But it does help me.
I think a lot of people can relate to that, though, because, I mean, for me, the biggest thing that keeps me from falling asleep is my brain just on constant movement, constant thinking about 50 different things. And so relaxing through something like that can help bring myself to calmness and then eventually sleep.
Exactly. Simone, what do you use to help yourself go to sleep?
You know, honestly, this is kind of contradicting you, but
That's okay. That's okay.
I like to put my phone away, actually, because...
Which is so good. Please keep doing that forever and ever and ever.
I feel like the nights when I do go on my phone, I don't go to bed because all of a sudden I'm on Instagram for an hour and I'm like, oh no, I was supposed to go to bed early.
Yes.
So I feel like just putting my phone away, brushing my teeth, getting into bed. Yes. I also like to read my Bible at night, actually.
Oh, see, that's so beautiful.
Well,
listen to Simone, everybody. She knows what to do.
Hey, it doesn't happen every night, but yeah, I feel like that just kind of calms my body and gets my brain in a fresh spot, ready to lay down for the night.
Yes, yes. That is what we call the right answer.
Well, thanks.
Yes.
A+ for you.
Exactly.
Hey, thank you guys.
Oh my goodness. So, you were talking about earlier about what are the ripple effects between all these different areas? And what's so interesting is that the physical component is always the easiest one to start with. Mm-hmm. One of the harder ones to start with, but the one that has become really, really important to me personally at this season of my life. And this goes to your overall podcast of being rooted and what are we rooted in, is the meaning aspect of life, and how a sense of meaning and a subsequent sense of purpose, how that influences a human's well-being, that influences the shape of one's soul in such a profound way. I'm now 52 years old, and that honestly, even more than what happens to my body, being able to wake up and go to bed knowing what it is that I'm investing in, why it is that I exist, is actually the most influential thing these days for me personally with regards to, is my soul well? Because it invites me into constant questions of, okay, Father, what would you have me be about these days? And how am I investing well in your kingdom? Am I investing well in your kingdom? What is it and where is it that I can go to do that? And so just kind of looping back to you guys and the ways that you are trying to do this podcast, helping people focus on what they're rooted in, for me, that really ties to a sense of meaning and purpose. And so I'm curious, can I turn the tables and ask you?
100%.
Yeah, sure.
So at this season of your life, what is it that you find brings you a deep sense of meaning? Where do you draw your meaning from? How do you name your meaning for life right now?
Wow, that's a loaded question.
That's such a good question. I love it though, and I think it's something that everyone should really think about and wrestle with. And I think that for me personally, I tend to think about the future a lot and get so caught up in that, and that makes me worried, especially making big decisions. Like right now, I'm about to graduate and have a lot of decisions to make, and sometimes it's really scary. But bringing back to that meaning piece of, okay, ultimately, who am I and who I am, who my roots are in Jesus. And I love Sadie Robertson. She talks about how ultimately your purpose is to love God and love others. And that you can do that wherever you're at. And you can do that whether I'm in college. I can do that whether I'm working at a big business finance company. I can do that whether I'm just hanging out with my friends. And that has really helped me stay more rooted during this time of life where it's easy to get nervous about, I don't know what I'm going to do. But knowing that my meaning and my purpose is found in Jesus, and ultimately he calls me to love God and love others, and I can live that out every single day. And so it's something I have to keep reminding myself every day, but that has definitely been helping me during this season of life.
Oh, love it. Love it. How about you, Simone?
I love that so much, yeah. I hate to say the same answer, but yeah, just finding my meaning and purpose and what that looks like for me. I think it truly is remarkable that we do have Jesus, because I think without Jesus, what is my meaning? Why am I here? And so I do think when I start to worry about my future, why am I here? Do I even have a reason to be here? Yeah, looking at the Bible, looking at what Jesus says about us, and he says, you are to make disciples, and that's what you're here to do. And so I think every time I get to have a conversation with others, gain wisdom from others, preach the gospel to others, I feel like that gives me a sense of meaning, knowing that I'm doing something greater than myself. There's something going out there that's affecting eternity, and it's not just affecting me today. And it's not affecting my future, but it's affecting the future of generations to come. And so I think just setting my sights on eternity and other people and not myself and on God, I think that ultimately gives me purpose.
Oh, And okay, like even just hearing you guys talk about that was so beautiful. I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel this way. It's like I have a reason to get up. I have a reason to engage this day. And it's a beautiful reason. And life feels more flourishing, whole, like there really is a reason to participate in this existence when you're able to name that meaning. What a good gift.
Wow. I love that definition of well-being that you use where it's all of those aspects. It's not just your health, not just exercise, but if you could be exercising all you want, but if you don't have a sense of meaning when you wake up, what's the point?
Exactly.
So another thing that I remember you mentioning was the importance of both interpersonal well-being and intrapersonal well-being.
Yes.
Could you kind of distinguish those two for our audience? Because I think that's a really important topic to discuss.
Yeah, definitely. So intrapersonal well-being, the intra means internal, like in one person. And so obviously we're taking a look at, okay, what is going on inside of me personally? Because I can invest in that. I can tend to what's occurring inside of my own soul. I can partner with God in the renewal of my own essence, and I want to be able to do that. But why? And then this comes back to the interpersonal well-being. One of the things that I just love about Christianity is that it invites us to see ourselves as connected beyond ourselves. Like we are part of a system. We are part of a people of God. We are part of God's good creation that is here to bring about transformation and renewal in this world. And we do that by being interconnected with other people. You can't just kind of forget about everybody else.
Exactly.
Like we're here for others as well. And so I often find the easiest way for me to talk about this is in the context of talking about my marriage. When I am not doing so well internally and maybe oh gosh, I'm off a little bit emotionally, cognitively, I'm thinking about who knows what, and maybe it spills over into my relationship with my husband. Like there's so much that's going on inside of me that sometimes it then affects how it is that I interact with him. And so my essence now doesn't just affect me, my essence now also affects my spouse. And so all of a sudden, it kind of like elevates my reason to take care of myself. Like I want to invest in my own intrapersonal well-being because if I don't, it's going to spill over and affect him as well. And so I don't want to be harsh to my spouse. I don't want to not live well with him. I want there to be an interpersonal well-being between us. And honestly, by first investing and caring for my own internal sense of self and well-being, it helps me live well with him. So I think about that little microscopic relationship, but now think about what that's like if all of God's people would tend to their own soul, their own essence, and go, I want to be investing in a whole, flourishing way of existence internally with God. And now I'm going to go live in this world and bring about renewal and transformation.
Yes.
And in the class, we talk about Shalom being pervasive in this world because of how we live with one another in justice-infused peace with each other. That just gives me goosebumps thinking like we could actually be about the transformation of this world because of how we live with other people around us. So again, going back to what your podcast is all about, what are you rooted in? What is like the deep roots that you're digging into? Are you drawing up nutrients that allow you to then live well with other humans or not? Oh my goodness.
That's so good. I love how you were talking about just how we do influence other people, and not only that, but the other people influence us.
Right.
And my dad always tells me that you have to choose your friends wisely because people are like chameleons and they start to blend into those that they surround themselves with. And so as we're influencing others, the people around us are also influencing us. And it's just this continuous cycle, kind of like you mentioned.
Right.
So that's beautiful. I love it.
So who can we influence for good? And so can I ask you guys a question too? Who is someone that has influenced you for good? Like you have grown because you have been in relationship with them.
Honestly, the first person who came to my mind is my dad.
Aww.
And I have a great
Dad,
relationship.
I hope you're listening.
Yeah. I have a great relationship with both my parents, love my mom and my dad, and how much they have just poured into me and supported me. My dad specifically, I just feel like he sets a great example of what a fatherly figure looks like. And just I've been able to look at my earthly father and also see glimpses of my heavenly father and just how he treats me and how he goes about the world very humbly. He's always wanting to learn. He's always wanting to grow. And he's always wanting to figure things out. And I feel like that's just made him into a very humble and successful man. And that's just someone who I really look up to and someone who I strive to be like.
That's awesome. How about you, Josie?
Yeah, I would definitely, echo my parents, but just for the sake of another answer, my cross-country team is just a group of people that I really admire, and they've really just turned me into who I am today. I didn't realize that I would love running. I enjoyed running in high school, but it wasn't my favorite, and now I associate running with my team. And it's community. Something that I look forward to every day because, I get to see my team. And they're people who, they challenge me to be the best version of myself, both as a person, but also as a runner. But they also accept me for who I am. And there's this beautiful culture. A lot of times in sports, you think that people are always just out to be the best and always driven towards success. And if you fail, you're done. But the team here at Bethel, everyone just is like, wow, let's just all, we're going to do our best and we're going to let God do the rest. And we're going to be proud of each other no matter what because we trust each other. It goes back to the whole idea of how everything influences each other. Because we're so used to being in pain together and running, it feels a lot easier to share pain that's going on in our life emotionally.
Right.
And it just kind of ebbs and flows like that. So some of my best conversations on stressful days where I'm trying to make a decision, it's talking to my friends on a run, and all of a sudden by the end of the run, I'm like, oh, this isn't so bad anymore. So that's definitely in my life what's been important.
I love that. And you're also talking about Christian community and how we actually can share with one another in the trials of life and the challenges of life, and that is so sustaining. Oh, yeah. It's beautiful.
I love how you talked a lot about renewal, renewal of our essence, renewal of our mind. And that reminds me of the verse Romans 12:2. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. How does that verse speak to you?
You have just nailed one of my favorite verses.
Yes.
Because for me, I love the verse, just the essence of what the verse is about, that we would be transformed by the renewing of our mind. It shows that we can always be in process of development, of change, of transformation. There is a renewing that can take place. But it is also a really scientific verse. Yeah. When I just love neurobiology, and I know just enough probably to be dangerous. When I think about how God has literally created the human form to whatever is shaped into our neural pathways into our brain, that is then what we do, what we embody, how we go about living, feeling, breathing, doing everything in life. And so to know that on a neurobiological level, we can actually change our patterns of thinking, our patterns of feeling, all of those things because of how we change our neural circuitry inside of us, that is amazing. And so obviously, Paul was not writing, be transformed by the renewing of your mind and thinking, let's reshape our neural networks. That's not what was going on in that verse, but that is what's going on in that verse. We can be transformed, changed. The essence of who we are can be changed. The more our mind is renewed, is introduced to ideas and concepts or people and situations, and something new over the course of time gets formed and fashioned into the very essence, into the very neural circuitry of who we are, and we are different people. It's one of the things that gives me such great hope that whoever I am right now, if I look at it and I go, I am not who I wish to be, I don't have to get filled with despair. I can go, I can be transformed, I can be renewed, and become something new and different over the course of time. I love that verse. I love that we actually have science that says, yes, that's possible. And I love just metaphorically what that verse is all about. It provides great hope that we can be transformed by the renewing, the changing of our minds around us. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think it's so important to note that our thoughts that we're thinking, what we're thinking about is so important, and it literally affects who we are and what we become.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people even speak certain truths over them that might not be truthful, but they
Right.
convince themselves that it is true. And so I think it's important to look outside of our minds and even look to God, look to what truth is, and then say, is what I'm thinking true?
Right.
And if it's not, well, then I need to be rethinking what I'm thinking about.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, doing a little metacognition.
Yeah,
Think about her thinking
Yes,
that.
Exactly.
Yes.
There's a quote that my mom always had up right by her desk, and it says, watch your thoughts because they become your words. Watch your words because they become your actions. Watch your actions because they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. And watch your character because it becomes your destiny.
Oh,
And
yes.
Wow.
I just think that's so good because it does show, okay, like I'm seeing this fruit in my life and I don't necessarily like it, but you can trace it back to the roots, and the roots often are your thoughts.
Yeah.
So,
yes, they are.
That's
Oh
so
my
good.
goodness.
So good.
Wow.
A lot of people don't take time to think about what they're thinking. Because honestly, like if you really like stop and start thinking about your thinking, it can be kind of anxiety inducing.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
wait, what is going through my head right now? And why is that there? And why am I thinking that? And why is it so defeating and full of despair? And then nobody wants to really be thinking about that kind of stuff. So then you're like,
Exactly.
never mind, I'm not going to think. I'm just going to scroll on Instagram and I don't have to think about my thinking.
No, Craig Rochelle is one of my favorite pastors, and he has a line that's always stuck out with me, and he said that you're the most influential person in your life because no one speaks to you more than you do. And
Right?
So
that's
true.
like so true.
Right?
Like the amount of thoughts that I have, like what, you have like 70,000 thoughts a day or something? And if 50%
you're
of those are
generating those.
negative, then of course things are going to play out negative.
Yes.
Yes.
100%. I love that. And I also kind of want to talk about the word shalom. I heard you mention that, and I definitely want to touch base on what shalom is. So can you just describe what is shalom?
Yes. So many people reduce it down to thinking we're talking about peace. And that's part of it, but it's not all of it. I love thinking about shalom much more expansively as a justice-infused peace, wholeness, thriving for all of creation. So like, just let that sink in for a second. Can you imagine this world being utterly consumed, filled with shalom, where everything is as it should be? I get choked up when I think about this. Everything is functioning the way that ultimately God had wanted everything to function, where humans are living well with one another, where we are caring for each other, we are caring for this earth that we were put on to be co-laborers with God, where there is justice for all things, all people, and everything is flourishing. That's shalom. Oh my gosh, ladies, can you imagine if that's what the world was like?
Yeah, heaven.
Exactly.
Yes.
Wow.
Shalom is a very expansive, big word that gets reduced really quickly. And I'd love to have people think about shalom much more expansively because for me personally, I find it captivating to think about how can I join God in the renewal of that here? Like could we be about that? In the Lord's Prayer, we talk about God's will being done on earth as it is in heaven. And that really challenges me to think about, what are we doing here on earth? Are we bringing about what God deeply desires that heaven would look like? Are we helping to bring that about here, now? And I remember years ago, probably when I was your age, and I started thinking about, how am I living my life? Am I actually living it in a way that helps to bring heaven here now, eternal life here now? Am I helping to bring about the renewal of all things here now? Or am I just waiting until I die and then get beamed up to heaven and have this beautiful experience? Like, I think we're invited into a beautiful co-laboring with God to bring about something stunning in this existence. And are we going to do that?
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow.
That's so beautiful.
Are there any ways that come to your mind on how to cultivate that practically?
Yeah. Well, honestly, one of the very first things that personally I need to have, going back to our thoughts, you know how we were just talking about that? Mm-hmm. I needed to cultivate, like in my own mind, this beautiful picture of God's good design for this world. And what does shalom really mean, and what does that really look like? Because if I can't imagine it, if I can't even like have a thought about what that really looks like, it's hard to kind of aim for that.
Yeah.
Right.
And so one of my favorite authors was a guy by the name of Dallas Willard, and he's passed away, but he was a guy who talked a lot about Christian spiritual formation. He was a professor at UCLA in the philosophy department, but was this brilliant Christian who just constantly asked people to think about what they were thinking about with regards to God, who God is, and what God has asked us to be a part of. Because if you don't have a vision, you don't have this captivating image of what God is asking us to be about and who God is, it's like really hard to get motivated to move towards anything because you don't really know what it is that you're moving towards. So practically speaking, for me, like step one was getting a really good picture of what is it that God's inviting us into? What does shalom really look like? Like what would that tangibly look like here in this world today? And I remember when I first started teaching well-being, I literally wrote a story of what would it look like in real life right now, living in a neighborhood in Minneapolis where shalom was present in our midst. And that practice of me like writing a story
allows you to like envision it.
Yes, that's exactly it. And all of a sudden
That's
it feels
so good.
tangible. Like, okay, I could see this really
Yeah.
coming to pass. And if this was going to come to pass, like then how do I live in a way that helps to bring this about with God's Spirit motivating me, helping me, sustaining me in the midst of this? So practically speaking, and I'm not a writer, so I'm giving advice about something that doesn't come naturally to me, but like capturing a vision. Maybe it takes writing it out, but at least at the bare minimum, imagining it. Now, if you have no imagination and you stink at writing, another thing you can do is read other people's writings to see how would they even talk about this. But then another thing you can do is what we're doing right now.
Talk it with
Exactly.
people. Yeah.
Listening to other people's ideas of what do they think this could look like. And that helps to shape the imagination. And when we listen to other people, we always grow. We always can evolve beyond who we are when we truly listen to other human beings. So find some people. If you don't want to write, listen. Co-create together in the midst of a conversation.
Yes.
So
Wow,
good.
that's amazing. That practical advice is so helpful, and it's easy. You can just write it out and see what it looks like. Are there other things going forward as they listen to all this, oh my goodness, I don't have great physical habits. I don't have great emotional well-being within me. What are some practical ways that people can go forward to form new neural networks and kind of create new habits to foster that sense of well-being?
yeah. Well, the beautiful thing about our day and age is that there is a ton of resources that are out there. And so really what it becomes being disciplined about curating resources that you know will help you. And then this is not rocket science. It's actually using those resources day after day after day. So even for me right now, I'm in the midst of creating even some resources for myself, for some guided meditation, prayers that I can do and I can take myself through every single day. So that way I am helping to bring about the renewing of my mind by what it is that I'm focusing on. So I like creating stuff because it's just fun for me. It's the professor in me will never go away. I'm like, why not create the curriculum? Let's do it. But for people who are like not crazy like me, go find some resources. Go find some things that you know this will help to shape me in a good way. This will help to root me in a good way. So some of the like oldest things that we taught ourselves to do, like memorizing Bible verses, that sounds like archaic and ancient. And there's a lot of people that are going to be like, that is such a dumb piece of information and advice to do. But think about what it does. It captivates your attention and it focuses you in on something that literally will be useful for your brain to be shaped by. And so what is it? What are the words that you put before your mind? What are the people that you put before your presence? What are the experiences that you allow yourself to engage in? All of those things you can oftentimes curate. You can be disciplined about those things, and you can be thoughtful about what will I say yes to having my life be impacted by.
So good. Thank you so much, Dr. Osgood.
Yeah,
I've already learned so much on this podcast, so I'm so excited. I really want to go back and listen, honestly. It's so good.
You're going to have to absorb it all in.
Yeah. We just want to leave you with the last question of the podcast, which is, what is one truth that you encourage all people to be rooted in?
Oh, jeez. There are so many things, and I want to be thoughtful about what I say here. One thing that I would hope people would be rooted in, honestly, what's coming back to my mind right away is this phrase of truly having our lives be focused on loving God and loving others. This brings us back to biblical texts that help us remember what it is that we're supposed to be about, and that is loving God and loving other people. And if we hold on to those two things and you move through the entire day going, am I loving God? Am I loving other people as I'm moving through my day? Those two truths, those two commands, those two pieces, I think can shape a life to be very well lived. So love God and love others. I'll stick with that.
So good. Amen.
Well,
hey, thank you so much, Dr. Osgood. We love having
thank you so much. Your pleasure to talk
to.
to.
Pleasure to be with you guys today. Thanks so much.